What is disassociation?
Dissociation is where you feel disconnected from your own life. You feel kind of fake. There's many different types. There is derealization, which is where you kind of feel like the whole world around you isn't real. You feel like you're in a dream, kind of in a movie almost. Then there is depersonalization, which is where you yourself don't feel real. You feel kind of disconnected from yourself. You feel like there's many different versions of yourself. It's a really weird feeling. Many different people go through dissociation. It's essentially can go from anything to daydreaming to really severe dissociation where you don't know where you are half the time, you don't recognize your surroundings, you have no recollection of your life, stuff like that. There is also dissociative identity disorder, which is where you go through something traumatic in your childhood usually, and in order to kind of get through it, you split off from yourself. So you don't have to deal with the consequences, and then you kind of have these different personalities, which is which are all separate and have different memories and stuff. Personally, I never went through dissociative identity disorder. I went through derealization, depersonalization, and dissociation for many years without realizing, and I think that encompasses everything. That's kind of the main part of dissociation. Bless you.
What is it like to realise you're going through this?
That's a big question. Relief, I think, is the first thing, to know that you're not crazy. I remember I started going through it in around, I mean, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when, but I remember it got bad when I was in year 8 or 9, which is 2014. And for years, I always thought I was just crazy, because I would tell my parents, I don't feel real, I feel fake. And they would always just say that it's like, you're just a teenager, you're just growing up. And like, that's the only explanation I really got for it. And so to find out that there is this thing called derealization, which was the only one at the time I knew of, it was like, I mean, it wasn't great, because also there was no cure for it or anything. And so it wasn't like I'm near the end. It was more like I just have a name for what I think I'm going through. There has still to this day been no actual confirmation, because it's one of those things where you can't confirm it because it's in the mind. It's not like, a physical symptom or something. But yeah, so the initial feeling was kind of relief that I knew I wasn't crazy. Because it wasn't until 2018 that I even heard of derealization. So for the 5 years in between, I kind of just, I guess, I just felt off, and kind of that was it. There was no real reason for why I hated it. But also the way it affects you is it kind of, you don't even realize you've been going through it for as long. Like I remember in maybe the end of 2017 roughly, I was thinking back on the last few months, and I was like, I felt really weird for the last few months, but I could kind of briefly remember everything before that. And so I just assumed it was like a new thing I'd only just been going through. And then I looked back on some like notes I'd written down from like 2015 and stuff, and I realized it'd been going for way longer, and that I'd just kind of been stuck in this this kind of place of limbo for a while. And so finding out why that was and what it was it helped, I would say. It was a lot less, I mean, it was still very stressful, obviously, but it wasn't like as bad as it had been.
What do you mean by notes?
Like, I used to write down, not how I felt. It was more like I would write down, I feel fake, and I would try and explain to myself the feeling I felt, almost. I guess because it was the only way I felt like I could deal with it, and the only way that I felt like there was something, I don't know, I was really out of I was really disconnected from my feelings, so it's really hard to remember what it actually was that I was going through at the time. Like even now, 5-6 years later, I still can't remember
So
most
almost
of
like
it.
a connection to reality.
Yeah, I guess. Although at the time I didn't know what, I think I just didn't think reality was a thing. Like it got to the point where when I was focusing on other stuff, it was fine, but when I'd get home and be on my own, nothing, like I didn't exist. it was like there was nothing. Like even now, I don't know what I did during those periods. I kind of would just watch TV shows like How I Met Your Mother to try and connect, I guess. But in my actual life, I couldn't. There was nothing. Like it was just blank. And this was during my, well, it was worse during my GCSE period because I would, when I was at school and stuff, it wouldn't really affect me too much. So I'd be doing work and stuff, but I would leave and I would go home, and suddenly GCSEs didn't exist to me. I guess that was one like the biggest causes of why I got so bad, because I couldn't deal with the pressure of exams and stuff. And there was a lot of other stuff too. Like I always felt like people looked down on me. I had these raps that I did at the time, and people didn't. It's not even that people treat me badly. It's more I thought of myself as really bad because of it. And so when I got like one comment, I'd take it to heart way more than I should have. And then I wouldn't want to be this person that people kind of look down upon. And so I'd try and disconnect from that. And so to finally realise all these years later that I had gone through all of this, because first of all, I hadn't known. I'd kind of just been going through stuff, assuming it was all fine all the time, not really connecting to how I actually felt. And it was difficult to accept it, because even when I realised, I still didn't really try and get any actual help for it. I kind of just in the back of my mind was like, okay, I'm going through derealisation probably, but I never actually did anything to kind of deal with the fact I was going through it. I just kind of used it almost as an excuse to not to stay this way, but to not deal with it. And at the same time, because I was still going through it for so long, I started, I guess, acting up, but not even for anyone else, more for myself. Like I remember the time when I realised it was really bad was in 2018 in November. I was smoking weed a lot, I was drinking quite a lot, and then these two people from my secondary school, I'd left secondary school at this point, but these two kids from my secondary school approached me and asked if I wanted to get involved in a kind of phone deal scam thing where you buy a phone and then you I think you buy a phone with a contract, and then they said they could cancel the contract. They said they had a guy who could cancel it, and then you just get the phone with no contract and you just sell it for like loads of money and you get like a big profit. Looking back, I don't know why I believed them. Like it was obviously fake, and they kind of guilted me into it a little bit by saying they'd already spent loads of money on making sure I could do it, which looking at it now makes no sense because what would they spend the money on? But yeah, so I did the deal, and at the time I remember feeling really disconnected. Like it felt like someone else was controlling my body. It felt like I was in a dream, and I was kind of just wandering around this area, doing these things, but I didn't even want to do it. I remember calling him, as in the guy who gave me the money to buy the phone, calling him a bunch of times, saying like, you trying to use excuses not to do it, but I did not feel in control of what I was actually doing. And I got home and I realised what I'd done, and it goes completely against all my morals. It's not something I'd usually take part in, and I told my parents and stuff, and they sorted it out, so that was fine. But I remember that night lying there realising how bad it had got, and that I was so kind of disconnected from myself that I could murder my parents and stuff and feel no emotion. As in, I wouldn't actually do it, but I remember thinking, like, imagining myself murdering my parents, and I felt no emotional connection to it. I felt kind of like robotic about it, and that was terrifying, and that was kind of what pushed me to realize that I needed help with it and that I couldn't just deal with this on my own. Yeah.
So you mentioned getting help. How did you attempt to get help with it?
So initially, so this is before those events happened. The first time I tried to get help was when I was doing my A-levels, which was back in maybe February 2018. I remember I had like a really bad period of it where I just felt really disconnected. I had no motivation to do anything and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't feel like anything was happening. And this was maybe a few months before my exams. So I went to get some, I went to just my local GP to kind of just talk about it. I think my parents helped me. It was like the first time really they'd shown any interest in actually helping me as well. And I went there, I talked about it. I think I cried for the first time in like a couple years as well. And I kind of opened up for the first time, which was something that I never really did. But I didn't open up about anything. I just kind of opened up about the symptoms, not about personally what I was going through. And then I didn't really do anything for a while. And then I went to college to redo my, I was meant to redo my levels, but I didn't. And I had a really bad episode, probably the worst one I've had possibly, where I was at college, I hadn't slept much the day before, and I suddenly felt dead. I don't know if that's like, it's really hard to remember exactly, like it's really hard to explain how I actually felt in that moment, but it felt like there was nothing and I was nothing. And I was with my friends at the time and I was looking at them and they looked really far away and like just anywhere, I guess. I don't know, it's really hard, yeah. And my friends were like quite scared and stuff, so I left them and said I was just going to get some water. And I went back into college and went to talk to my teacher about it, because I always found talking to someone helped and I didn't really want to tell my new friends what was happening to me. And he said that there was a student before who dealt with it, and he told me to sit in a corner and just kind of like sit there until I felt better. And then I went back into class and I felt really weird again and I left. And so he told me to talk to it's not a therapist, but there's like a person who deals with this kind of stuff. And so I went and talked to him and he said maybe we have another appointment sometime, but it didn't really help me again. And then the next week, roughly a week later, I went through a very similar experience, not quite as intense, but still really intense. And again, the guy just didn't really do anything to help. He kind of just said, oh yeah, it's this. Yeah, he didn't really give me any tips, any advice. I kind of just got to talk about it a tiny bit, and that was kind of all I got. And then that's when we went into November, and that's when the whole phone deal thing happened, and I realized I needed help. And I talked to my parents about it, and they suggested getting into therapy. And so I went to a therapist, I think that weekend, so maybe a week later, after the phone deal thing happened. And I talked to a lady who talked about all my symptoms, everything I'd gone through and stuff, or at least everything at the time I could remember going through. And she then referred me to another therapist who works in the same building. And I'm actually still with him to this very day. And that was about 3 years ago now. And yeah, it was really helpful. We talked about various stuff. I wouldn't really say we made any actual good progress though for a while, because I was still really attached to the feeling fakeness and not actually the reasons behind why I felt fake. It was more like I would get there, I'd sit down and I'd say, this room looks really weird, I don't feel real, I feel fake. And then yeah, it kind of was just this consistent, I forgot what the right word is for this, but it was just this like every week for like the first kind of 4 or 5 months. And then I got into a relationship with a girl, and I guess it's helped me to realize just how bad it had gone, because she would tell me that I would tell her stuff like, you feel really fake, you feel like this, I don't think you're real, but I would never remember telling her that. And we were dating and I never really felt the feelings that I knew were there. Like I knew that I was still very disconnected and that I wouldn't be able to be in like to have good relationships with people until I actually properly sorted it out. And so that kind of kick-started me into attempting to sort it out. I started to tidy my room and stuff. And at the same time she broke up with me, and then she decided to get into a relationship with my friend, and I guess that kind of kick-started all the emotions again, because for the first time I I actually, like, there was something I was going through at the time that I felt like really angry about, and at the same time just stopping and going to my room and tidying it was bringing back all these other memories from 2015, 2016, when I felt like I was being bullied because of some raps and stuff, and when I was going through all the exam stress and just the way in general I felt about myself, which I hadn't really been dealing with, all came up at once, and it was this huge intense feeling that I hadn't had. And I remember there was pretty much a month in summer 2019 where I didn't smile, and I was just straight up depressed. I'd say it's the only time I felt genuine depression. And it was, yeah, I remember it got to the point where maybe end of June, start of July, I thought the only way that I'd be able to get over it would be to just take my own life. I never attempted it, but I thought that was the only way to get out of this pain, because I'd been feeling it for so long at that point. And yeah, it was difficult. And so I decided to continue with the therapy and cut her out of my life, which was a very good idea, because it's hard to deal with all this past stuff whilst also having to deal with the emotional side of what she was doing, because she was manipulating me. She was being very, I don't know what the right word is for it. Yes, so I cut her off. I cut off the so-called friend who had gone behind my back and talked to her and stuff, because it was just kind of messing with me emotionally at a time when I was only just starting to feel emotion again, which was making it a lot harder and a lot more difficult. And that's where dissociation kind of comes in again, because I cut her out for a few, I'd cut her out for a few days at this point, and I went out drinking. And drinking is, as in alcohol and weed and stuff, is something that already messes with your mind, like it's an antidepressant within itself. And I drank a few times before this during the week, but this time something just seemed to click, and all of the kind of progression I'd made during that week, or during like the last month or so, went in that night, and I was suddenly back into being even more dissociated than I was before. I remember I got home, and at about 4 a.m. I woke up, and for the first time I felt really intense derealization, where I felt like I was I feel like I was in a dream again, but I knew it was real, and it felt like nothing was happening, nothing was there. And I remember just panicking, like it was, yeah, I went to my parents' room, and I was like, really, I wasn't even upset, I was just like, I don't know what, I mean, I was upset, but I didn't feel upset, I just felt like nothing, I felt terrified. And I called my friend and we talked for an hour, and that helped. And when we went on holiday the next day, and that doesn't help, because I was suddenly in a situation I'd never been in before, in terms of a new house, new environment, away from everything that had happened. And so I spent that week just feeling really disconnected. I remember actually attempting to I did message her again, because I thought the only way I'd be able to feel those emotions was to talk to my ex again, to try and remind me of what had happened, I guess, more than anything, which was not a good idea, but didn't help either. And then I got back from the holiday, and I decided to put in a routine again. And so then I continued with therapy again, and we actually went through week by week different events from my past, which helped to kind of center myself and made me kind of start to feel more whole again.
So you've mentioned symptoms of dissociation, but are there any more? And what's it sort of like going through your day-to-day life with these symptoms?
Are there any more? Yes. One big thing I remember noticing is the way things look is almost morphed. The best example I can remember is every day, for like years, I'd look out of my window, and there's this street opposite us. So we have like a road here and then a street here, and the house opposite looked like almost like its own island. I don't know how else to explain it. That's kind of the best I can remember. And it was like that for years. Now it looks like a house, it looks normal, but like everything looks very different. Everything's kind of dull as well. That's the other thing. Like there is no vibrant colors or anything. Everything is just really dull. It's almost like a depressive symptom, I guess. where there is no life to anything. And the other thing I remember going through a lot was feeling like I had different voices in my head, I think. I remember always, like, I'd be trying to sleep. This is when I was first kind of going through it, so about 2 years ago, because this is gone now. But it would always be like when I was trying to sleep, I'd be hearing these people talking to me and stuff. And I don't know if that was just my tiredness and me thinking, and just because I was so separated from myself, I felt like my own thoughts were someone else's, or if it was like something different. I can't really answer that question. And as for the other question, day-to-day life, I mean, it varies. There is no like correct answer to this because everyone goes through differently. But for me personally, it was very 2 steps forward, 1 step back to begin with, because I'm slowly learning to kind of go through everything I've gone through and remember it and actually realize I went through it. So a lot of the time I would start to make progress, and then something would happen. Like for example, my ex came back into my life, and I still didn't know how to deal with this emotionally at the time. And so I would talk to her and I would disconnect from my emotions, so I didn't have to deal with how like sad it made me or angry or whatever. And so I just wouldn't, and so I would just kind of dissociate again. I just disconnect from how I actually felt to talk to her. I mean, it would take me a few days to kind of realize I don't want to talk to her, I don't want to be friends. And when I cut her off and actually deal with how I actually felt, I'd feel great again. I'd start to make progress. The other thing I remember was I tried, meditation. And at the time, I think I must have done it wrong, because I remember that week was one of the worst that I've ever gone through. I couldn't sleep for about 10 days. I couldn't sleep during the dark for some reason. I was literally going to bed at like 10 p.m. and I'll just be lying there, apparently still awake, but without any thoughts. I'd just be lying there for hours until it got to about 5 a.m. and I just like had to sleep. And I remember thinking I was actually going to die at one point because of lack of sleep, and I messaged all of my friends thanking them for what they'd done for me and stuff. But that was more down to lack of sleep. That's not really a dissociation kind of thing. The other thing I remember is because of the 2 steps forward, 1 step back, the first few times I took a step back, it felt like I was never going to be able to go forward again. Like it felt like I'd made these improvements and then I'd messed up and I wouldn't be able to get back. And I remember that was really tough to deal with initially, because I didn't know that there were going to be steps forward again. I just assumed I'd be stuck like this forever again. I'd never be able to live my life. I'd always be almost stuck as a child. And I remember in October, it got to the point where I took a big step back. I can't remember the reasons why, but I fell back into this kind of period of feeling really out of it, really detached from myself. And again, I thought the only way I could deal with it was to kill myself. And I was at the station, I think it was Earls Court station, and a train was coming, and I just had this huge urge to just jump and end it, because I didn't think that I could deal with having to go through the whole process of getting better, then going back, and getting better and going back. Fortunately, I didn't do it in the end, but that was probably one of the most difficult moments. And then gradually it slowly got better, and I remember finally in December, me and my friend went to watch Star Wars, the most recent Star Wars film, and I was talking about my opinions about it or something, so it wasn't a huge deal, but one of the big things I didn't have was opinions about stuff. Like I kind of wanted to be this perfect person who everyone liked, and so I kind of got rid of my opinions in a way, like I shut them down. And I remember I was walking home after seeing him, and I almost felt like myself come back into my body, and I just broke down into like tears of, not even of joy, just straight tears of like just all of these emotions coming back to me. And for the first time in years, I felt like a person again, and everything I saw was normal. Because one of the biggest things I haven't mentioned yet was and symptoms, as you said, was I saw everything in third person. So whenever I'd be walking around, it was like I was watching myself from above, or I was watching myself through like a camera view. And for the first time, I could see through my own eyes, and I could look up and see houses and stuff, and they'd actually be towering over me instead of just being around me. And I'd actually be in the space I was in, and that was like one of the biggest moments of recovery, and it was just good progress from there.
Are you still affected by dissociation?
I don't think anyone ever fully gets over dissociation. Personally, I still have really bad memory. There's quite a lot of times where I'll be trying to say something and then I'll completely space out, or I'll forget what I'm saying and stuff like that. And especially when I'm tired, it gets a lot worse, and I'll like lose all sense of where I am, who I am, a little bit. But now that I've had it for so long and I know what it is, it's really easy to deal with. Like, I never really worry about it. Whilst back then, when I was going through it really badly and I didn't know what I was doing and stuff, it was quite bad. I'd say the main way, I guess it still affects me, is sometimes I'll lose all, I don't know what the right word is, when you just kind of have no motivation to do anything. I think that's like the biggest thing I notice. When I'm like on my own for even just a day, I'll suddenly lose all sense of who I am and stuff, which does kind of suck, but also I know kind of what to do to get over it. Like, if I just go to the gym, or I go to do badminton, or I chill with my friends again, then it's always a lot better. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really affect me anywhere near as much as it did a few years ago. But it definitely, I do still feel the impact of it, especially when it comes to kind of having everything in like a linear view in terms of memory and stuff. Like, I'll just get these random memories come back to me from years ago that I forgot, and then sometimes they won't really feel like they happened, like other memories, but people will be talking to me about it. Like, I'll meet someone one night, and then a few weeks later I'll meet them again, but they know who I am, but I have no idea who they are. Like, I'll recognize their face, but I can't remember where I met them or who they actually are. Like, I just know that I know them, which can be embarrassing, and it also does make it feel like sometimes I have the worst brain in the world when stuff like that happens. And yeah, and it's weird. It's very all over the place, I would say. Sometimes I forget that it's even a thing for like weeks at a time, and then sometimes it just hits me really hard, and I go into this kind of like depressive state where I can't even get out of bed until quite late. But overall, it's definitely a lot better than it used to be, and yeah, I would say I'm definitely on the mend, and hopefully soon will be, well, I already am fully functional, but we'll be like completely past it.